Welcome back to Basketball Fan, everyone. Today we need to have a real conversation about Paige Bueckers because what we just watched was honestly one of the most shocking performances of her career. And no, this is not about hating on Paige or pretending she suddenly isn't talented, because that would be ridiculous. One bad game does not erase everything she has already proven as a player. Paige is still one of the most gifted young guards in basketball, with elite footwork, incredible touch around the rim, smooth shot creation, and one of the deepest defensive skill sets we've seen from a young star entering the WNBA. But when a player receives superstar-level praise, they also have to accept superstar-level criticism when things go wrong, and tonight, things went very wrong. From the opening quarter, Paige just didn't look comfortable at all. The rhythm was missing, the confidence seemed shaky, the aggression disappeared, and even her body language felt completely off throughout the game. Then the technical foul situation happened, and from that moment forward, it honestly felt like the entire night spiraled out of control. Now, to be fair, that technical foul looked incredibly soft. Paige got bumped, reacted with frustration, clapped her hands, and somehow the officials decided that deserved a technical. It felt weak, especially considering we've seen far more emotional reactions go unpunished in professional basketball. But even though the call was questionable, we cannot pretend that was the reason for her struggles, because it simply wasn't. The truth is Paige Bueckers did not play well, and the most frustrating part wasn't even the missed shots. Every great scorer has bad shooting nights. Caitlin Clark has off nights. Eric Ogunbowale has off nights. Sabrina Ionescu has off nights. That happens in basketball. What stood out here was the hesitation. There were multiple possessions where Paige had completely open looks and refused to take them, and that's where the criticism becomes legitimate. One sequence perfectly summed up the entire night. Rhyne Howard was defending Paige and had actually done a solid job defensively for most of the game, but on this possession she backed off completely and gave Paige all the space in the world for an easy catch-and-shoot three. No contest, no rotation, no pressure at all. Instead of taking the shot immediately, Paige pump-faked, drove directly into traffic, and forced up a much tougher mid-range attempt. That simply cannot happen from a player with her scoring ability. At some point, elite scorers must trust themselves and let those shots fly. And this is where so many people misunderstand the criticism surrounding Paige Bueckers. Nobody questions her talent. In fact, people criticize her because they know exactly how talented she is capable of being. Paige already has one of the most polished defensive games in the league. She can score at all three levels, create separation with ease, finish through contact, and control the pace beautifully when she's confident. But the passiveness becomes frustrating because it feels self-inflicted. People constantly compare her shot attempts to Caitlin Clark and say Paige simply plays a different style, but eventually you have to ask the obvious question: whose decision is it not to shoot? Nobody is stopping Paige from taking those opportunities. She's passing them up herself. And if you're talented enough to dominate offensively, then eventually you have to embrace that responsibility fully. It also feels like the constant online obsession with efficiency has started affecting how people evaluate her game. Every conversation surrounding Paige becomes about percentages, efficiency ratings, true shooting percentage, and shot selection analytics. And yes, efficiency absolutely matters in basketball, but there comes a point where a superstar also has to prioritize pressure, aggression, and volume scoring. Sometimes your team needs you to take difficult shots and attempt to completely control the game. That's what elite stars do. Caitlin Clark understands that mentality perfectly. Even when Caitlin struggles, she keeps attacking, keeps firing, and keeps trying to impose herself on the game regardless of the misses. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails, but the mentality never disappears. With Paige Bueckers, there are moments where the game begins slipping away, and instead of becoming more aggressive, she becomes more passive, and that's exactly what happened here. This was not some meaningless blowout where the game was already over early. Dallas was right there competing, and even grabbed the lead in the fourth quarter after a big bucket from Odyssey Sims with around 7.5 minutes remaining. That should have been the moment where your franchise star completely takes over. Instead, Atlanta Dream immediately answered back. Ryan Howard scored, Alisha Gray scored, Paige missed a three, Alisha Gray attacked again, Paige missed another shot, and suddenly all the momentum disappeared. Another thing that stood out was the pace Paige played with throughout the night. Normally, when she's confident, she controls the tempo beautifully, gets to her spots quickly, makes decisive reads, and keeps defenders uncomfortable. But in this game, every possession felt slow and hesitant, like she was overthinking instead of reacting naturally. Now, to be completely fair, this loss was not entirely on Paige Bueckers. Eric Ogunbowl struggled offensively too. The defense had multiple breakdowns late in the game, and Atlanta simply executed better when it mattered most. And honestly, Alisha Gray deserves a lot of credit because she was phenomenal in the fourth quarter, attacking aggressively and making huge plays when her team needed them most. But because Paige Bueckers is viewed as one of the future faces of the league, performances like this are going to receive heavy criticism, and that's part of being a superstar. The expectations are massive because the talent is massive. And at the end of the day, everybody watching knows Paige is capable of far more than what we saw tonight. This is Basketball Fan, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Welcome back to Basketball Fan, everyone. But honestly, the bigger conversation coming out of this game is about Paige Bueckers and clutch situations, because right now there is a very real discussion happening about her late-game impact compared to her overall talent level. And before people misunderstand the criticism, let's make this clear again. Nobody is saying Paige is a bad clutch player overall. There are plenty of players in the league who perform far worse in pressure moments. But when you compare her late-game performances to how talented she actually is, to the way fans and media talk about her, and to the superstar expectations surrounding her, the drop-off becomes impossible to ignore. There have been too many moments where Paige disappears late in games instead of taking complete control, and until that changes, people are naturally going to compare her to players like Caitlin Clark because Caitlin embraces those moments every single time. Even when Caitlin is struggling offensively, you still feel her presence in the final minutes. Defenses still panic when she has the ball. She still attacks aggressively, still puts pressure on the defense, and still carries that killer mentality no matter what the stat sheet looks like. And right now, that's the biggest difference people notice with Paige Bueckers. The talent is absolutely there, but the mentality in those clutch moments doesn't always feel consistent. Skill-wise, Paige is unbelievable. Honestly, from a pure basketball talent perspective, she may already be one of the 5 most gifted offensive players in the entire WNBA. Her footwork is elite, her shot creation is beautiful to watch, her balance is incredible, and her overall offensive package is already special. But basketball has never been only about talent. Basketball is also about mentality, confidence, aggression, leadership, and the willingness to take over games when the pressure becomes uncomfortable. That's the next major step in Paige Bueckers' development. Because until she proves she can consistently dominate during those intense fourth-quarter moments, there will always be hesitation when people try placing her above players who already do it on a regular basis. Unfortunately for Paige, nights like this only make those conversations louder. Again, nobody is saying Paige Bueckers cannot become one of the best players in the WNBA because she absolutely has the ability to become an all-time great. The talent is undeniable, but there's a huge difference between having superstar talent and consistently showing superstar mentality when everything gets tense late in games. That's where she still has room to grow: more aggression, more confidence, more urgency, more willingness to live with mistakes, and most importantly, more willingness to completely take over games instead of fading out of them. Because tonight, when Dallas needed a star to step up in the biggest moments, Paige Bueckers simply wasn't there, and that's the honest truth. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think people are being too harsh on Paige Bueckers, or do you think the criticism is completely fair after a performance like this? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more WNBA coverage right here on Basketball Fan.